Welcome. Today we're going to discuss the technique broken gift and some of the more important principles, concepts, rules, theories, and strategies of the technique. But before we start talking about the strategy, let's talk about the question. Why do we have a gift technique? Well, simply put, category completion. So now that that's answered, we can move on. Well, actually, this is a term that gets used a lot in American Kenpo, but a lot of people don't define it. So let's define it. What is category completion? Well, the way to think about category completion is that it's just a paradigm for cataloging different options. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we look at ranges, this is a category. We're out of range, and then we're within range. So that completes the category. But notice that within range has different ranges built in. So this would start up a new category. For instance, I can grab his fingers. I can move on to the hand, the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder, and even get all the way as close to the body. But the interesting thing to keep in mind, just like we broke that down, each of those could also be broken down. But the important part is not what we're doing, but understanding which category you're defining and how you're going about completing it. So now that we understand why we need to do a gift technique, let's ask another question. Why do we have to do the whole technique? Why can't I just punch him in the face or break his arm and get out of here? Well, again, we're learning a system. In this case, American Kenpo, which is the study of motion. The idea is to highlight and show you all the different rules, principles, concepts, and theories. And those are done through the paradigms of techniques. Another way to think about it is that these are just tools, the self-defense techniques, that we use to show you and highlight those principles. So now that we understand that, let's actually talk about the strategy of the technique. The strategy is pretty simple. We're going to be using contact manipulation to control their dimensional zones so that we can take the upper hand and then counter. So let's get into the technique because it's a little bit more complex than it sounds. Remember, rule number one is to establish our base. So we're going to be getting into our stance, establishing our base. But notice what happened. I got close, and I'm going to be walking into that hand. So remember the strategy. I want to start controlling his zones so that we can check up any loose extremities. That's another rule that we have to obey. So the way we're going to be doing that is two different ways. I'm going to be creating a wrist lock, and I'm going to be creating a shoulder or elbow lock. I'm going to be using that by using my elbow. Now keep in mind that I said lock, not break. Why? Well, because if I break this, I can hurt him, but I'm not controlling his zone, in this case his width and depth, so I might get hit with that punch. And I don't want to trade the break for the punch. So rather, we're going to control their zones by locking it and then taking advantage of it so we can hit him. So notice how we did this. I am not walking away from my hand and then using my muscles to try to pull him. Rather, I'm using what's called third handing. I'm going to keep his hand against my body so that as I step, my body is creating the pull, and I'm not just relying on my arm muscles. But this brings in two more concepts, opposing forces and borrowed force. If you notice, our pull is starting to get their body moving forward. We want to take advantage of that. Using opposing forces, we're going to enhance the strike by being able to deliver it as they're coming in and we're pushing away. But let's talk about this hand. I don't want to glance, and I don't want to lose line of sight of what I'm doing. So I want to do this as a major, making sure I have that angle of incidence as I'm hitting, and then continue to keep my hand there. Now, this technique is typically known as the upside down Y technique. The reason that is because of our foot pattern. We're going to be stepping forward, and we're going to be zoning to the left rear flank, and now we're going to be zoning to the right rear flank. That's why it's typically known as that. But notice what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using that third hand one more time as I zone so that I can continue to control those dimensions. Now this brings us into the final maneuver. In this case, that vertical forearm strike to the face. But why are we doing the forearm instead of just punching him in the face? Well, remember what we said earlier, category completion. We already have techniques that show you how to do the punch and the elbow. And in this case, we're doing the category of which part of the arm we're striking with. In this case, we happen to be using the forearm. But keep in mind that this is reading. We're fighting. We have to read the situation. I might have to do the punch if we're farther away. I didn't get to pull him where I wanted, or he's too close. I now have to do the elbow. So read the situation. Don't just memorize sequence. But one more thing we need to talk about. Like always, we're left in the middle of the fight. This is for you to decide if you need to continue or if you're just going to cover out and leave. In this case, we're just going to cover out and leave. So now that we talked about the rules, concepts, principles, theories, let's actually demonstrate it once fairly slow so you can see it execute. We hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system a little bit better. Thank you very much.